Good evening. My name is Martin Fernando Rincon. I am the president of Phi Iota Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Thank you guys for coming. We appreciate the fact that the alumni are here. Thank you for taking the time out of your day. And yeah, if each of you could please introduce yourselves when you guys graduated, your name and where you work. Yeah.
My name is Susana Chisleros. I graduated class of 2008.
I'm Ian Mieta. I graduated SFS 2011.
My name is Gabby Ibaka and I graduated SFS 2008.
Christian Arona, SFS 2010.
My name is Jessica Torres. I graduated SFS 2009 and now I'm at the Department of Education.
Hi, my name is
Everything for everybody. Rolling for it.
Are you starting again?
No, just where you work.
Oh, I work at Children's Hospital.
I work at Mapbox, it's a tech startup.
I'm a law student at American University.
I work at the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute.
Hi, I'm Sarah Vasquez. I graduated college 2013 last May, and I work at EverFi in education technology.
Hi, my name is Selena Seja. I graduated from the college in 2013, and I work for TRIO, a federally funded first generation college student.
Hi, I'm Zenon Heindes. I graduated SFS 2013, and I work at Generation Progress at the Center for American Progress.
Hi, I'm Alejandra Martinez, graduated with these lovely people, 2013. Shout out to all of my GSP people out in the audience. Which is where I work, yes.
I'm Vicente Garcia. I graduated from the college in 2005, which makes pretty much the oldest one here, and I currently work at the Atlanta Council, a foreign policy think tank.
Hi, I'm Jason Resendez. I graduated in 2008, and I currently work for the National Council of La Raza, and COLAR is the nation's largest Latino advocacy organization.
I'm Francella Chinchilla. I graduated from the college in 2008, and I work at the Raven Group. We are a government affairs consulting firm.
Hi, I'm Sarah Aldello. I graduated from SFS in 2006, and I work with Zenon at Generation Progress, the Center for American Progress. We're a progressive think tank.
Hi, I'm Ana Maria Matias, and I graduated in the college in 2012, and I work at Covington and Burling LLP. It's a law firm.
Hi, I'm Margot Hofstetler. I graduated SFS 2013, and I work at Corona Corporation. It's an international development consulting and implementing firm.
I'm Yasmin Serrano, graduated May 2013. I live in Booz Allen in the Coast Guard County Terrace.
Thank you. Okay, so as you guys can see, we have people from here that started Georgetown in 2001 and going. But the reason why I say that is because when we say the history of the 8.5, like we're not just saying it for a pretty title. We say that because these are the people that brought up Georgetown, who brought that Latino community, who participated in the Latino community, and who made it what it is today. By any chance, do any of you guys know the percentage of Latinos that were here during your year when you guys were students?
8.5.
In 2009, when I had just started, it was 6.7.
6.7?
I think we were 6%.
6%?
Yeah.
Okay, so around that. So as you guys can see, like during that time, the number actually it went up, it went down. So it has had its ups and downs, but it's still 8.5. Like when you really think about it, that is a small percentage, considering other universities have much larger numbers. And what are the implications of this? Obviously, the Latino groups that are here for Latinos are not that many. The resources are not that high. But the thing with that, like with time, and what the alumni have allowed us to do is have the resources that we have right now. Some of the, pretty much the money that we have like within the Latino community now, provided by SAC and all these other organizations, they weren't present here. Let's just say 4, 5, 6 years ago. But now we have that, and now we have all these other Latino groups. But the reason why we're here today is to talk about your experience, to talk about your years here at Georgetown, how Georgetown has changed, how it has become what it is today. And that's either through programs like GSB that help out students, the minority community, or like other programs like, or organizations like LASA, Mecha, CASA, Lambda Phi Chi, Lambda Upsilon Lambda, all these other organizations that have been present here throughout the years. And how have they helped us out? And how have they helped out the community? Or even individuals themselves, professors. So we would like to start off, and pretty much any question it goes, yes?
Quick question.
Yeah.
8.5 or 6%, does that include international students?
And you see, that's the thing, there's not a distinction between that.
Gotcha.
So it's just an 8.5% that's given to pretty much the whole Latino population, which is very weird, and like it should be like a little bit more descriptive, or it should be more specific. But yeah, any question that I ask, it's pretty much open to anybody in this like panel. If you feel comfortable sharing your experience, that's fine, and you don't, then by all means. First off, let's start with your backgrounds. So where you guys are from, and that transition between your neighborhood and Georgetown, pretty much coming to this elite institution. How was that transition, and how did you feel pretty much being thrown into the Georgetown hilltop? Anybody?
Okay, I can start. I'm Sarah. I'm from Bakersfield, California, so Central Valley, California. There's not a lot of us that end up out here. But one of the reasons why I was very excited to come to Georgetown is when I came to a Gap weekend. Metro de Georgetown was selling burritos as part of the Taco Bell boycott in Levy. So there used to be Taco Bell there. Is there one anymore? No. There used to be a Taco Bell in Levy. And back then, the Coalition of Immokalee workers were protesting Taco Bell. And Metro de Georgetown, as part of the protest, every Thursday evening we would get together and make burritos and then sell them and say, hey, buy from us, not from them. And so that's when I met like JR, the communist, who some people probably don't know. And Jose Barragán, maybe people know Jose Barragán if you're from LA, and it went to like the, hey, welcome to Georgetown. You were, because I know there's an event that happens in August in LA with accepted students. But that was like the first, I think I could kind of hang here. And it was really important to see the Metro group on campus, because otherwise it was really scary. And getting to campus, that was a whole other experience. But back then we had the 3616 house that Vicente lived in, called Brown House, which basically became my home away from home. That was a lot of fun. Maybe too much fun. And learning the things like, what's like a power hour and very horrible things that did not help my academics. What did help my academics was when I joined Mecha, there would be different events like, I have a professor, I don't know if you want to register for that class, maybe do this one instead, or this professor is really great, you should get into that class. And so the whole upperclassmen, underclassmen mentorship that Mecha provided really helped make Georgetown home for me back in the day. And Chende was like part of that experience for sure.
I'll just add to that a little bit. So I had an interesting background. So I grew up as an Army brat, so I kind of grew up around the U.S. and different types of cultures and communities. And so when I came to Georgetown, I felt that I was prepared for the culture clash that everyone tells you about. And I was, to a certain extent. I didn't realize that there'd be a financial culture clash, and that there would be, I guess, an educational clash, in the sense that I thought I was prepared, but I started classes and I realized I wasn't, and I needed that extra support and help. And I realized that the people around me with the pop collars and the name brand clothes was not necessarily something that I was used to. So it was very difficult starting in that sense. But as kind of Sarah was saying, as soon as I started, I found a community which essentially was Mecha, that a community of friends that I would always turn to for support, whether it be learning how to do Power Hour or having recommendations on the courses and the professors that I had. So I really turned towards a community. From then, I've been trying to keep involved with students and campus life here. And I have to say there's been some things I definitely applaud. For example, during my 4 years at Georgetown, there's a huge division between LASA and Mecha, and there really wasn't any coordination, collaboration of any sort. And I don't think there was hostility, but at the same time, I don't think there's any interest working across different groups. So I thought that was really interesting. And then the other issue about funding for different things. We ended up having to take things into our own hands, whether it be making our own tacos in front of the Taco Bell, doing our own initiatives that we funded. The tacos, we bought the tortillas, we made the beans, we made them in our kitchens, and then we bought them out. And so everything that we made, we put back into the next time around. We didn't make it. So, but yeah, I guess that's another example of how important that community was for me and for others during that time.
We cooked a lot. We used to cook all the food at welcome dinners. Latino welcome dinner.
Yes, they were all homemade.
Like, everything was great. Yeah, I've been to some of the recent ones.
I'd like to add a little. So I'm Ana Maria and I come from Dorado, Puerto Rico. So I had a very different experience coming to Georgetown, just meeting new people and just the clash of living on an island, not a lot of different faces, and everyone's pretty much the same, and coming to a school like this that basically has a big overall international community. So it's great to meet new people and understand new cultures, but that definitely is difficult. And so I fell kind of into LASA. And so LASA was my home away from home. But I do agree that there has been a big, big change from the beginning when I came here with Mecha, LASA, and different groups in Georgetown to when I left 4 years later. I was part of the board my last year at Georgetown. And we really decided that there was a big division and there wasn't a reason to have a division between Latinos on campus because we're all Latinos regardless of where you come from or what background you have. And so the biggest issue was to try and mold these different groups to see that we have one viewpoint and it's to promote our culture. And so on the board we really did try to join forces with Mecha and different groups on campus, and I really think that Joaquin Ormeño, he's not here right now, but he was the president that 2 years ago, and he basically started that, and we have gotten so much more funding. Reventón Latino has become such a big thing, and there was a lot of collaboration, not only between LASA and Mecha, but also with GASA and different groups. So I think that we have really evolved, and I'm really proud of where Georgetown is kind of leading us towards, and proud that we can show our culture off. So I hope that continues on, and it's up to you guys, you know, we're gone and we have great memories, but you guys have to keep that up.
Okay, and that actually leads to another question that we had, which is great. That transition between generation and generation, how does that happen, and how did that occur within your groups as well? Because you guys know, like, let's say you guys have like some random Latino organization in 2008, they're completely different in 2009, they're completely different in 2010. The e-board, the administration, the general members that are a part of that organization, how is that important, and when is it the turn of the general body to take that initiative and to run that organization? Because as many of you guys know, like right now you look at Georgetown, some organizations, they've been evolving, some others have like dropped off the map, and then there's others that have come like out of nowhere. So how do you transition between generation, like within the Latino community itself? Because I know that at least for Latinos, it's a little bit complicated because you already have the academics, you have that culture shock, you have the financial shock, and all that kind of stuff. But how do you take that initiative to start leading your own group and to decide, you know what, it's our turn to actually continue this legacy?
I think for me, it was a lot of the upperclassmen. As a freshman, I was pretty much lost. By lost, I mean I was everywhere, nowhere at once. Not in class, but in clubs. Like Mecha and all that It was more of like the upperclassmen. I know that when as a freshman, I found a senior who kind of showed me the way. And kind of like was doing great things that I want to do. Like she's awesome, she's leading organizations, she's advocating for education. That's what I want to do. So I kind of attached myself to their hip, and I said, "Hey, you're great. I'm going to be great. Teach me." And I think that's a lot to do with like, the organizations as well. Like the upperclassmen have to lead the underclassmen because I feel like the underclassmen are always the ones who want to do things. The upperclassmen are the ones who know how to do things, but they're so busy doing things. So in transitioning boards in Reventón Latino, who we did, I was a co-chair my senior year, and I was on the board for the 2 years before that. We started this underclassmen, upperclassmen mentorship. There was an upperclassman and an underclassman who was like the under chair. So it was pretty much like guiding them and telling them, hey, this is what we're gonna do, and this is why this is important. I think once people know what something is important and why it's so special, I'm gonna use those as an example, like LASA, MECHA, GASA, the collaboration, people started becoming invested. And that was a lot to do with the people ahead of me, like Joaquin, who was very friendly. When I came into freshman year last time, was like, we don't talk to them. They were different from us. But to us, a senior, we were one kind of thing. Like we meshed, and that was because of who was ahead of us. So a lot of it's up to you guys and who you bring in, and who you teach, and who you take time to mentor.
I think if I can add something to what Yasmin is saying, I think it's a really, really good point, the idea of mentorship and making sure that you pass on the feeling of welcoming new students on campus and recognizing similarities. That's really important. But I also think that as the seniors and the juniors go up in their years and get ready to move on and leave Georgetown, to also embrace the fact that the incoming generation will have maybe different ideas and will have a different population and face different issues that they should also address on their own. And making sure that you don't, I don't want to say cling, that's a weird word, but get stuck in this idea of like, this is what we represent and this is how we should move forward, and not allow for growth and change and addressing new issues and new concepts that different generations may face.
And to add what Alejandra said, I think that was especially prevalent for me. So I came out as gay on campus, and when that happened, the generation that had started the LGBTQ Resource Center had it was very diverse, but by the time that I was coming into age of that, it was mostly all white gay men. And it was sort of a problem because then it was I never felt comfortable to come out. And I think it was sort of interesting because my year there were basically 4 out Latinos on this campus. That was it. And that was hardly anything. I think when I graduated, the GU Pride board had become 6 different out Latinas at the freshman year. And I was like, how did you even do that? Right? And I don't want to take credit for it, but I think the visibility of being being an out Latino, different identities, not just Latino and Latina, other identities you carry, is a big push for a lot of students who are coming in who didn't necessarily have someone to look up to in the communities. And for me, I know I didn't have someone to look up to when I was a freshman and sophomore.
In regards to the barriers that are pretty much in place by the institution itself, how did you guys get past that? Because it's one thing to talk about the problems that are within our own community, let's say just partnerships with other organizations, but it's a completely different level when talking about the administration and the things that they set in place and pretty much the way that they try to push us aside in a way. How did you guys deal with those problems? And I guess I say that because there has been improvement within the community as a whole, within its structure. But how do you continue that? And that's a lesson that I think should be passed down to the generation. So, any ideas?
So, can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes.
Are you talking about pushing an ethnic studies program? Are you talking about a diversity requirement?
That would be one of the biggest things, but yeah, anything around pretty much that subject.
Okay.
Alright,
I'm gonna be short. This could be a whole conversation by itself.
This is happening.
Hi everyone, my name is Hemi Ordonez. I graduated 2008, and I always have an opinion. Or two. You should know that. Or 10. And so, I did a lot of work around sort of the Latino Studies Initiative with Professor Ortiz when I was an undergraduate student. And I think one of the main things we kept hitting, or one of the main barriers we kept hitting was funding, right? How do you get enough money to really fund a chair? And then I came back and was hired on by the university to work on a diversity initiative that started in 2009 for the summer. And I'm sure all of you may know this, or there were a series of committees, one dealing with student affairs, one dealing with academic affairs, I was really most concerned concerned about the academic affairs committee, and there's huge resistance among current tenured faculty to actually push this forward. And so it's like a twofold problem, right? Like there are a number of faculty that really aren't on board and really aren't on our side, and I can name them later. And in addition to that, you know, there is a funding issue which you're always going to come up against. Like this university will only respond to creating. I was a student here when they were pushing for an African American Studies minor, and that only really moved forward because, you know, there was people from that community that ended up funding that minor, or the certificate program, I guess. It's not a program. Or it wasn't at least then. So I think those are the two areas that I think we always have missteps, and I know different students I think have reached out to a vast number of folks on this panel about this issue, because I think it's something we come back to time and time again. One of the arguments I always make is that we don't have deep enough relationships with the Miami Club of GU Latino alumni who would probably endow a chair. And so that's, you know, they do have money, and they are predominantly Latino. And so that would be like my next educated guess as to where that one of the problems could be resolved. The faculty piece is actually a larger issue as well. So.
I'll just add to that as well. I think an event like this is a really positive step to overcoming institutional barriers, because so often we really just don't know our history older than 4 years, or the seniors when we were freshmen. When I was here, I worked also on different ethnic studies course offerings, what we call the Cure Personality Initiative, which is actually really cool because several people on this panel worked on Student Friendship for Unity, what Henley was referencing, and just the lack of speed that we catch up with what's already happened is tremendous, if not years. And so sometimes you realize with institutional change, administration can really wait out the students.
Yeah.
Like literally be like, let's just hold off until those seniors graduate, those freshmen, I mean not quite this calculated, but
yeah.
Kind of. And I've actually been told that fairly directly. And so I think, one of the biggest barriers to progress is not knowing your own history, right? And so I think, even learning the history of other progressive movements on campus, of something like the LGBTQ Center, or how that happens, both how that atmosphere is created and also logistically, how do they raise that money? How do they do that? Oh, do you actually need money for that, or can that be this kind of a situation? Or like, let's think creatively about this, but let's see what hasn't happened, what has happened, and let's really learn, and let's do that in like a semester, not 3 years. And so there's certain tools that we can have, things like filming this panel, or interviews, or asking alumni to write op-eds, or also making those conversations with the administration very transparent, so that, because the administrators and professors here are part of the community as well, and some of them, and they have opinions, and they have power, and they have resources, and sometimes when we just look at them as people in our classes, we don't recognize those opinions and those powers and those allyship and the obstacles that they present as well. So I think that's really also important. And in terms of institutional progress, I also think it's really important to learn how to expand your community beyond those who identify as your community, to understand why this is, rising tide lifts all ships, and why different community struggles are important for other community struggles.
Can I just add something while you guys provide advice? It would also be really helpful for the underclassmen to hear that first-hand perspective on your experience. I think is really crucial for them to hear, and I'd love to hear that as well.
Yeah, sure. Actually, I totally agree with what you said about how important it is to learn from other movements. And I was an undergrad during the campaign, the Out for Change campaign. I was very involved. I was on the G Pride board when that happened, and I was the communications director for the actual campaign, and on the negotiating committee with President DeJoya to establish the center and sort of the initiative around it, which included like Henley's initiative. It included a student affairs component, it included a safety component, because a lot of the things we're dealing with was related to hate crimes, and it included an academic affairs component, because a lot of it included education of the campus on sort of being inclusive. The three things that we had on our side were You know, we had stakes, we had organization, or I think the three things that are important to something, overcoming institutional barrier, especially the one we were facing with the hate crimes and the lack of sort of LGBT inclusiveness at Georgetown, were stakes, money, and organization. And we had the stakes when people were getting hate crimes on campus. I mean, the stakes couldn't even higher in terms of personal safety, in terms of living up to Georgetown's commitment to students. Two, organization. We were very, very well organized. I mean, in the beginning we weren't, but we got very organized very quickly because of the stakes. It was a cross-group coalition. It included Latino groups like MECHA. It included the Georgetown Solidarity Committee was very instrumental because they had a lot of lessons to give us in terms of organizing and organizing for success and tactics. It included alumni. Alumni were very involved. We were very smart to engage alumni early. Prominent LGBT alumni donors. And if you are organized and if the stakes are high enough, money will eventually follow. We were not worried about money at the beginning. I mean, we were worried about putting policies in place to protect students. And I think that, you know, in terms of a diversity initiative, I see a lot of stuff happening around the initiative and around sort of, you know, raising awareness, but I haven't seen sort of the stakes being painted yet. You know, it's important to be diverse, but what are the stakes? I think for me, if you look on this panel, when I was in class of 2004, graduating in 08, there were a lot of other brown Latino males, and now, you know, how many of us are here? Those are the stakes. You know, how do you make that real for someone? And it includes, you know, engaging alumni to talk about their stories. It involves professors. You know, Professor Ortiz is very involved. I think if you have that, it's about building pressure. You know, money will follow, a chair can be endowed, but you really need to paint for your fellow students and for alumni and for others sort of why is this important to you and why is it important for Georgetown as an institution. And that's why we were very successful with the Out for Change campaign, because we were able to do those very concisely. We were able to do it at all levels of the administration. You know, getting professors, adjuncts, tenured professors, administrators. We had some administrators on our side. And we took that to DeJoya, and at the end of the day, because of pressure and because the stakes were so high, we didn't get everything we wanted, but for the most part, we did. And I think that that's something that can be replicated and has been replicated on campus and off campus with other things. And I think that just really what it comes down to is sort of working together to be organized, and then, you know, working across. You know, there's mission creep, but I think the opportunity campaign took 8 to 9 months, and we had.
Hey, you paused, we cannot hear you. Right?
Oh, sorry.
Just pause for a bit.
And administration can sort of outlive you, but if you have alumni, if you have the institution engaged, not just on the student side, I mean, it took 8 months to get everything we asked for Out for Change, and I think that that's something that can be replicated if you really want it, and if you take the time to organize to get it.
I should say this. I think a lot of this has been attempted for many, many years. They're trying to do some institutional change around like Latino studies or whatever, and alum are ready and like willing to help. And people are still so connected with each other. Like I just think back from when I came to Georgetown and met machistas who were about to graduate, who of course have those folks. At some point I like met people that graduated in '98, which, you know, clearly we can go back earlier than that, but it's about asking them, because I think we all have feelings about our grad experience at Georgetown. And to be honest, like, I don't get back to Georgetown right now until I pay off my student loans, because in my mind they're still paying Georgetown money. But I know there's a lot of other alum who feel the same way, but if we actually knew there's an initiative that we could give to, that would go to students, that we're trying to make this thing happen, I would put money on it that a lot of us would be willing to give in ways that were not directly to the university.
I just think a lot of people are afraid to ask to the administration, to the alumni. Like when we were trying to do the career personalities initiative, I remember it was Sarah and I at the tea house, which is like the G's of the Solidarity Committee house, and we were just like mapping everything, and we're aware that all this SC Student Commission for Unity stuff had happened, but we just didn't really know where to turn to get names. Right? So it was just like I know this little chart was created by someone 4 years ago. How do I find this person? And I didn't even know Emily had done it until actually went out to the work world and met her. So it was it's sort of how do we create structures where communication can happen is important, and ask alumni to do stuff for students, but also don't be afraid to ask administrators for stuff. For a lot of people that came to the despedida, alumni that came, it was at Gaston for the first year, and everybody was like, oh my gosh, it moved so much. But that only happened because the new provost was there, and we had trashed him on his blog where he was like, diversity is great. We were like, no, you suck. And like, eventually we made it seem like we were a big group of students that were like very agitated, and we met in his office and we're like, you're gonna give us money. And he was like, okay, $25,000. We're like, what? And so that's how it happened. Like, we didn't do anything else other than that. But we got that $25,000 because we're like, Lavender graduation is happening, why do they get money? And it came down to like, we don't have a place to host these things, right? Like other schools have centers that like put these things on. Like the LGBTQ Resource Center has Lavender graduation. But there's nothing, unless we ask for it, ask alumni and administrators, it's not going to happen.
Well, and I think what Sanan's also hitting on too is that us as students and alumni, we are like essentially the consumer of this university. So we actually are the pressure point of the change that happens. And until we take that into our own responsibility, the change won't happen. But like, we so often feel like the university administration is the top of the food pyramid, but we're actually on top of that pyramid. And like that boundary doesn't break with alumni. Like we are all part of that, but the thing is that requires that we take our own accountability and responsibility for that.
I think if you like, what Dana just said is a perfect example of growth of what like you all, like students, recent graduates have been able to do. I think my Desperatita, it was in like a random room in Jezreel. I think because of Father Joe like made it happen, and maybe 30 of us could fit in it. And the thing that we were most stoked about was our sashes. That's because we ordered them on our own. So like they're right? You're like, okay, fine, $20 more for graduation. But like, I think this is just like an example of this change that has happened over the years because of the student power, because students being the consumers and demanding change.
But it's a lot to ask the students, right? Sometimes I feel like we shouldn't have to do this. Like this should be a default, and like it's an added stress, and I think it's an added stress that a lot of students of color have on campus when they're like, I have to be part of this club, I have to do my schoolwork, I have to get a job, I have to like help my family at home, I have to do all these things that it's like stressful. And I think one of the things that we haven't done well as a community is like being able to talk about it, right? Like there were several, like I knew several people that dropped out of kind of like the school because they were stressed, because they needed to go home, because they were sick, all these things. And like we make, like as a community, we always talked about it as like a, oh, they left. Like why did they leave? That's the thing that's the one thing that should not be happening. And like sometimes I think that we let that slide.
And I think just to problematize that too, I know that I benefited so much just in terms of community and having people around from the work that, like, for example, Henry and Jason were talking about. Having strong Latino student leaders, right? I mean, like, we're all like talking about this, but like, unless allies, people who get it, and Latinos are in leadership positions, like this stuff doesn't happen, right? And I think that's a big problem too, right? It's like you feel the responsibility to take care of your community, and that I know that kind of was hard to balance, right? But I think you can't understate that. I just wanted to like highlight that all these things that we're talking about, it happened because Latinos were in student leadership positions, and it's like as big as like pressuring faculty and sitting in Joe DeJoy's office, but it's also small as like being on SAC committee and giving a bunch of extra dollars to get your shit. No, I'm serious. Like we had events that wouldn't have happened because like I forget who, like Josh Guzman and Francis were like they were on SAC, and if they weren't on SAC, Metro wouldn't have had dollars. End of story.
And we organized to make that happen.
Yeah.
They were like one of my mentees, and I was like, you need to start funding the organizations you care about. So someone needs to be on SAC. So you guys just need to all get on board about taking shit over.
Yeah, I mean, like, I went to senior class board for a reason. I want to make sure the events were things my friends would go to. So, like, going into it, which I think another piece of, yes, like supporting each other in our Latino spaces, but also like pushing ourselves to get into non-Latino spaces to make sure that whether it's like a welcome week event or a transition out event, like again, that people go, like my class still has separate homecoming events for the African American community. That's fucked up, right? Like we should be able to feel welcome into the regular homecoming events that are happening, but it's not there still. So
Yeah, it's definitely about engaging and developing allies and external stakeholders outside of the community, because at 8.5%, I mean, the administration is the top of the pyramid, right? You're not enough numbers-wise to really make a difference to them. They'll get another different 8.5% of Latinos, right? You need to look beyond that and sort of get, your 1% folks involved who are at Georgetown, who some of them care a lot about these issues. They care about going to a diverse community. Exactly, to a diverse.
Hey, some GSC people hooked it up. They have like a lot of money at GSC and help fund a lot of living wage stuff.
Yeah.
I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Like,
So it's identifying those folks and using them strategically to get the things you want. Cultivating allies outside of your respective ethnic groups, I think is really important. If you want to do something institutional, I mean, it's one thing to do something for Metro to do it, right? But if you want to change the institution and the way things have been working for, you have 2001 all the way up to 2013, and a lot of these things have stayed the same. I mean, we're talking about a jump from a Despedida in one room to Gaston Hall. That's not that big, right? We still have one Latino professor. That's a small concession for the administration to make. I'll give you $25,000 to have a party in Gaston. Great, but what happens after that's done? It's about looking at the bigger picture and dedicating yourself to it.
So I guess you guys talked about like a lot of responsibility that's pretty much like put in the students' shoulders. And I mean, like, you guys are college students, you guys have stuff to do, you guys might be a little bit stressed after this was put on you guys. But how do groups like GSB, CMEA, some faculty members or like the professors themselves, how do they help out with that, pretty much that role? How are they like there for you guys, like throughout all these responsibilities?
I wanted to ask as well, so there's a question from the student.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Actually, if you guys want, we could take a second to take questions from you guys. If you guys have any.
Hi, I'm Pranav Rosas. I have a question for you guys. Do you guys face like similar statistics as like when we're talking about the 8.5% here at Georgetown? Do you face similar statistics in the workplace? And what do you feel like the direction is? Like where do you think the direction is going at work?
Some people work in Latino specifically.
No, I think, even for me, so just they're making fun of me because I work for NCLR, which is, it's like the nation's largest Latino advocacy organization. We represent 300 affiliates throughout the U.S., millions and millions of Latinos. We have on-air, they call the Alumni Awards, which is the only primetime Latino show on a major network. But my job specifically is dealing with corporate America. And I'll tell you that it's amazing to be in a meeting that's the corporate board of a Latino organization, and the most powerful people in that room are not Latino, and are definitely not from sort of the background that the organization is serving. But that's sort of the way that corporate America is, and that's one of my roles in the role of my organization is to push big companies to increase the representation of minorities in the workplace. And it's a big deal. I mean, you face the same kind of issues where a company can fund X, Y, and Z program, but if there are no Latinos on their boards, and it's sort of that kind of concession thing, that kind of, I'll give you $25,000 to have a party in Gaston, that kind of thing. So I think that, even though I don't face it every day at work, because I know everyone I work with is some kind of Latino, you're still struggling with that with corporate America.
On the other side of that, I actually work for a majority-minority firm too, and so a lot of clients come to us for this type of issue exactly, increasing diversity among their leadership. I have 2 clients now that are seemingly really progressive. One of them is a coalition of national environmental groups, all the big environmental groups. Another one is tech-focused. They do venture capitalistic stuff in Silicon Valley. So in a lot of ways, those are groups that are really progressive. And they are both desperate because they have a horrible diversity problem, right? They have no people of color on their boards. They have little to no people of color in their leadership organizations. There is a really strong sort of underlying culture in Silicon Valley that is young white male, So these are groups that are huge, that are making a huge impact on our society every day, and they want to change, and they're sort of not the right-wing groups, the left-wing groups, and they need a lot of help too.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
I work for a tech startup. We have offices in San Francisco, and when I'm your diversity, like, come on, guys. And everyone I work with is totally, they're pretty down, but they're also white, mostly straight guys, right? And part of the reason I'm here, shameless plug, we're hiring y'all. I'm serious. I mean, we're looking for like developers and designers. So, like, I would love to like, we can talk, but like, people, no, but like, it's this real. Like, people, like, we recognize we have a diversity problem, and like, here I am, you know. Step up.
I think for me, at least at Georgetown, I could ignore the rich, preppy people because I was in my own little bubble. I was in the Black House. I was freshman year med child, OPC. I had my circle of poor friends. Who knew the struggle? It's like every person events I went to was an open bar, and it was like, yes, you feed me for free. Come on. So that was great for me. But now being at Goose Island, which I should have voted one of the best places for Latinas to vote, my question is, where are they? Because my roommates are all Latinas, I don't know anybody else. And my client side is about 50 males, 2 females. Not only am I the youngest, I'm the only Latina in there. So I can no longer ignore it. And it's not a fact I have to be conscious of. So for me, I'm already fighting the ageism. I just love isms. Latina, being low income, being a liberal in a Tea Party environment, it's pretty funny. Actually, I was covering the New York Times the other day. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I like him. But it's a fact that I can no longer ignore. I felt like, Georgetown did prepare me for it. I felt like being in class and having a professor. I was a STEM major, so science and technology. So being the only Latina, we were the only Latinos.
Yasmin and I were the, like Michelle Lil and Yasmin and I were the only Latino graduates from that graduate program.
And had a professor say, who's been to London and seen this thing? And we turn around and see everybody look at each other like we've been to Mexico. And they have bad water too. So I learned from Georgetown, but now I'm implementing it and I'm more aware of it. And I'm sure a lot of the panelists in this board can tell you, like, it becomes real. Like, there's an issue you fight about with your administrators about being like, I want a next study program. And then you leave Georgetown, you're like, the things that I learned fighting for it, I can apply now into the workforce. So because I know how to talk to administrators and Judge Joya, and I can address authority, now at the workforce, I'm okay speaking to my boss, who's about 70 years old, and be like, no, I think you're wrong. You know, respectfully, I think you're wrong, and you hired me. Don't fire me. But it's no longer ignored, and it gets more real, I guess I would say, to keep it young.
I've been in progressive policy and politics now for about 6 years or so, and it is a very white world out there. And oftentimes you find yourself being like the only Latino at a table of people who are talking about issues that directly affect your community. So that is like a real thing, but I guess a good side of it is like when you meet a fellow Latino, you got family right away. And there's like this community that starts to form, similar to just like being here. But I think the other side that I was not prepared for, and honestly I'm still working through, is what is it like to be passionate about fighting for issues that impact the lives of Latinos, not at a Latino-specific organization. Because oftentimes when you're in a general progressive space, they don't see you as also like having the knowledge and insight and like downness for your own community because you're not at a Latino-specific space, because I'm not at an NCLR or a LULAC. So that is like something I'm not ready for, and I'm still not ready for, and still very angry about, to be honest. Because for some reason, like it's as if the only way you can care about the community is if you're in Latino spaces. When in my mind, like, part of the fight was to make sure that our issues are brought up in like mainstream progressive spaces too. So get ready.
I think I'll just add to that a little bit. I also work at a tech startup, and there's one other Latino woman in Texas, and maybe like 3 other people of color in the whole company. And I'll say a couple things. First of all, like organizations don't have diversity unless it's specifically part of their mission. Like unless, in my opinion, unless it's kind of a fluke sort of, but like it is something that has to be part of people's mission. And I wouldn't say that my company, I love where I work, and I wouldn't say that it's intentional that it's not very diverse, but perhaps there's comments on the tech industry and stuff like that, but I will say that it has to be a part of the mission. And what kind of diversity? Like economic diversity, ethnic diversity, political diversity, like what kind of diversity? But I also will say that when we graduate, and if you're passionate about these issues, you can feel a lot of pressure about getting a job where you feel like you can advocate these issues, or where you have the avenues to advocate these issues, and whether it's you want to go into policy, or you want to be at a tech startup that you can advocate these issues. And sometimes those pieces don't all fit together at your first job after college. And you feel a lot of personal pressure to pursue these issues that you feel so passionate about. And I think it's really important that we all individually figure out what other activities we're doing in our life, or what other things are fueling us that are also outlets to pursue these issues. And if your workspace is for better or for worse not an outlet, and you want to change that, great. If you don't want to change that, like maybe you have other outlets that you can address these passions in too. And so I think it's important to just also realize that like not everything works out ideally after college, and there's a lot of pressures. And advocating your social political thoughts, unless you're working at some very great policy advocacy organizations, work might not be the best place, might not be the most conducive place where you can speak your mind about those things. And I think it's important that we figure out what other spaces we can, what other communities we can, what other activities we can, and like still fuel those passions. Because it can also be stressful to want to talk about stuff and then realize it has nothing to do with your work. And then it's kind of incongruent with your job.
Oh, sorry, go
I
ahead.
was gonna second what Sarah was saying. I've been working in foreign policy, like national security, peace and security type of stuff for the last 7 years. I'm always the only Latino at the table of 60-year-old white straight men. All the time I walk in, and I always get the second glance, and it's like, whoa, you're not white or man or man. A 60-year-old. No, but I work.
You go to work.
And it's surprising. I'm the only Latino at my think tank. There's over 120 full-time employees, not including all our senior fellows and whatnot. I'm the only Latino. And you think that's surprising? You'd be surprised that we have a Latin America Center, and we don't have any Latinos in the Latin America Center. It's just shocking. We have a board. Our board is 150 white people. There's one African American guy, and that's it. And they are fairly influential and are usually the ones pulling the strings in foreign policy. For example, our chairman was now Secretary Hagel, and went from our council directly to the Secretary of Defense. So these are the people pulling the strings on U.S. foreign policy. And it's just old white men, as you could imagine, but it's perpetuating. So I've somewhat gotten used to it. I'll be worried when I do get used to it. And I too came with the Shameless Plug with looking for interns. Keeping that in mind.
That's actually looking treat. Like anybody on the panel, like you guys can like.
I need interns.
I think it's really important to one, not only think about it in terms of, wanting to talk about. I think it's important to think about it not only wanting to go into a workplace that you can feel progressive and talk about issues. I think no matter where you work, and one of the most important things, and I see this a lot in my job, is how important it is for you to bring others along with you, right? So, if you're in a workplace where there are no Latinos, and you have an ability to hire an intern or be influential in that process, I do that for Georgetown. Whenever my team's looking for an intern, first place I send stuff to is Georgetown, and try to bring my fellow Georgetown Latinos into it. And I think it's one of the things that especially if you go into a corporate job in corporate America, where I know so many Latinos that work on the corporate side that once they get there, they're like, I'm gonna keep my mouth shut because I want to keep this job. I'm not gonna rock the boat. But you don't have to rock the boat to talk about diversity and talk about the need for more Latinos and more employees that represent the fastest growing consumer group in the U.S. It's always good to have a company's diversity reflect that of their customers. So I think once you get in a position, at any employer, just think about that. Think about bringing others along with you, whether it be an internship or if a job comes up. Email to your friend, to your network, and I think that's really key to do that, and not to forget the fact that just because you're the only Latino somewhere doesn't mean like you've made it. You need to think about other folks as well.
Yeah, question.
Why do you think it's been so consistently difficult to have more diversity in the workforce? Do you think it's a lack of interest on the people's part, or is it the employers not putting enough effort in actually genuinely recruiting these people?
I think for me, it's I try to get them to recruit here. Well, they've been looking at me for 6 months, but I'm already kind of like, hey, Georgetown. But what they've told me is they want computer science, they want engineers, they want people who are physics, calculus, and unfortunately, like I spoke earlier, I and Seven were like the only ones of Latino descent in this classes. So when I try to bring somebody in, I was gonna ask, hey, have you taken any calculus, computer science? And usually it's like, no. Yes, you can. The limit does not exist. So at least that's for my part, being in IT consulting and strategy. It's a lot of the classes that they require. Unfortunately, a lot of Latinos are not in them, and that's because sometimes there's not support enough. The support, I know a lot of the students and scholars start as pre-med. Having the semester, they're no longer pre-med because they don't have support. So I think a lot of it is Georgetown not giving students the outlets and the kind of like help that they need to stay in those science and technology courses, which are very hard. Because I knew that when I came in, I took calculus, econ, but I walked into the class and first day they were already past my AP physics class, and I was like, what? What is this? So I was playing catch up and keep up, and it's really hard to do the same thing, both at the same time. So that's from my perspective.
We also have to get better at our hustle. Like I know networking is a word everybody hates or freaks out about. Like I did one-on-ones alum, and I was talking with a lot of GSP folks about networking, and people were like, I hate that. But DC is a hustle city. Like, you like it or not, it's a hustle city, and you gotta get yourself out there. And so
that's how I got my job.
yeah. So let's do the story of Zen and I, because I was at the Boca Latino Summit in was it April or May, and Metro de Georgetown was there, and I was like, oh my God, my people, I'm so excited. And I was like, yo, I need an intern, and I pay. And here's the things that I'm working on, and give me an intern. I've been wanting to have an intern from Georgetown. Since I started back in DC in 2008, and I have not been able to get one, even though I make little posts on the Meta site. I'm hiring, I need an intern, okay, hello, alum. And then the student Zen wasn't even there. And then the mentees were like, you need to talk to Zenon. Zenon sent me his stuff in. I interviewed no one else because the stuff was great. And then I left in September to go to CAP, and we had a position that was open, and I'm like, oh, Zenon's kind of perfect for this. And then I hired him. Kelly was also my internet advocate.
Yeah, so there are several people who've gone through the Sarah networking system. I was one of them. I am now a graduate and have networked into another job. but this is real. Like in any industry, regardless if it's STEM specifically or if it's in tech, you have to network your life away. It's the first thing I tell people about DC. You have to meet everyone in your field, be at every event that you can, and have people who are gatekeepers, people who are already in the field that you have some relationship to, who are willing to introduce you to other folks. And that's
a lot of people come in with their network already.
Yeah, that's real.
They come in with their family members, their parents have been here for 10 generations, some uncle is a lawyer.
A different kind, but it's definitely a network.
Yeah, it exists already. I've seen in many spaces where somebody's grandkid gets a paid internship somewhere because they're a grandkid that has no other qualifications whatsoever. So, and that is what you all are, what we all were, and still shows up fighting against. But this is where you have to rely on us in the hustle.
I mean, we also can't let all the companies off the hook, right? Someone said earlier that diversity has to be part of their mission. They should look harder for you guys. Yes, there was 3 of you, all 4 of you should have been hired like this, because that fact that you are of a color should have been an extra point on your resume. The fact that your Latino surname comes up on your resume should not be a reason to, make a lot of assumptions, but it should be a plus. Companies aren't really there yet. Some of them are trying to be, some of them just don't know how to be. But the excuse of we couldn't find any qualified candidates is bullshit.
not true. They need to look hard enough, and they're not doing that. So don't think that it's all
Well,
on you.
I think it's a two-sided. I think part of it is one, right now, especially because of language skills, if you're looking for a corporate job, it's very, very valuable to speak Spanish or to, corporate America wants to hire Latinos.
Yeah.
Because they know at the end of the day, you're the people that are buying their products. You're the people who are using their apps. You're the people who are, buying their detergent, whatever. They want to hire you because you have a sense of sure, you have a sense of corporate sensitivity, but you also, some companies don't know how to do it. I'd say a lot of companies don't know how to do it. So, you'll get a look on your resume, but, I see a resume that's, okay, great, this last person's name is Garcia, but, this resume is horrible. You need to take everything from internships to networking very seriously, because all of your peers are. And if I get a resume that is, a Garcia versus a Mitchell, and the Mitchell is a stellar resume, and this person, there's no periods, misspell, whatever, I'm not going to hire them, I'm not going to give them a chance, but I also don't want to risk, that they don't do a good job or whatever. So I think it's on both sides. I think you need to, make sure that you're doing your best to represent sort of, the work that you think you can do, whatever.
No, I have to disagree.
I'm going to jump in here because I get a chance. So I work in healthcare, and in healthcare I've seen that it's very, definitely in this area, there are not many Latinos, Hispanics. And unfortunately, everyone's making decisions about our health, our Medicare. Everybody wants to make rules for our community, but then there's no one there to speak for us. And it's unfortunate because we are large groups, both now on a middle class income, also on a lower class income. And unfortunately, we have a very hard time finding Spanish speakers to hire in this area. I know that in comparison, other areas like Los Angeles, they have people in higher roles that speak Spanish. In this city, that's not the case. So I am very often the only Latina at the table, and it's really, you carry a lot of pressure with that because you're representing for a lot of people. And like Sarah was saying, people network, yeah, there's a lot of doctors that have their kids interning and their kids have no idea what they're doing. And they just get in because their parents are doctors and they can do things like that. They can pull, strings and get someone in because they're related to them or they're friends or whatever. And for me, it has been hard, although I'll say because I got it was very emotional for me here at Georgetown. It was very difficult. I cried a lot. I cried almost all the time. Some people here can attest to that. I cried with them. I cried at meals. I cried everywhere. I cried It's very, very hard. And then go back and have to try to do homework. And then you're like, Jesus, is this ever going to change? Should I just give up? Should I just let it be? And you have to remember, whatever you're doing right now, whatever steps you're making them, yes, for yourself and for your organization, but it's really going to end up affecting all the organizations and the entire campus, the entire environment here. So it really does matter. And although I know that many people are just like, I just want my years to be the good years, I don't care what happened before and after me. That's really not a way to think progressively, because obviously people before you, like, it pains me when I hear about problems, because I know that we went through a lot to get there. I know that Reventón Latino was an idea for years before, and it would pass on and someone would leave and someone dropped out, so that person doesn't want to do it anymore. For years before it actually became something. And now I'm really happy to see that it continues, however it does within groups and or however you have to ask for funding. But back then there was, how do you ask for funding if they've never heard of this event and they barely fund our little small pizza parties? Are they gonna fund it? So it was very intense, it was very emotional, and here I dealt with a lot of those. I got used to, unfortunately, what the white world was and feeling like I was so out of place, that now doesn't bother me because I'm so used to it, unfortunately, that it doesn't faze me that I walk into a room and it's all white males sometimes white females. Unfortunately, it is what it is, and I don't like it. I don't say, I'm just used to it in a way that I wish I wasn't, but it's nice to see other Latinos when I do see them. I don't see enough, and I'm very concerned because in the field of healthcare, there's going to be a lot of changes that affect Latinos, and I think about my mom and all my parents and my relatives, and I think, like, that's so crazy that we're such a huge group and we're still not seen in some of the most important, decision-making areas. It's kind of scary. So I don't want to see that in the future, but I'm sure some
Yeah,
people.
and I think to add on to Susie's point, something that hasn't been mentioned here is in the world of education. I was Yvonne's college counselor at Christ New York High School, and I taught Stephanie's sister. And Yvonne, you know, for a school that's 98% Latino, there were, what, 2 of us that were Latino on staff?
Yeah.
So it was very problematic for me, at least, and I made sure to let my bosses know that it was a problem. That at a school where hundreds of families speak Spanish, I was the one expected to translate for everything. literally. Whether it's, you know, parent meetings talking about college, or, you know, someone stabbed my kid or something. I mean, you that actually did happen once. So just I guess, you know, also to your question, you know, why don't employers come out to get us, or why don't we apply? My position in particular was a volunteer position. My first job out of college, I made $575 a month in New York City. That's problematic. And if you look at the positions where, you know, you have a direct influence, you know, the paycheck is not there. Sure, I can go to, you know, where the admin works, you know, congrats.
Did it help?
What?
Did it help?
You're taking that, yeah. But the positions where we want to have a direct influence on Latinos, healthcare, or, you know, well, not one, but healthcare, education, they don't pay enough, right? I think, who used to be a former teacher here? Sarah, Jessica, you used to teach for a while, right? So, I just assume that you're Latino at Georgetown, you go into education. So. I'll bear it on.
I want to say though, we've been putting a lot of responsibility, like do this, do that, do this, and like if you're not feeling I'm feeling overwhelmed for it.
I'm gonna cry right now.
I know, right?
No, I'm sorry. I just want to get a sense from the room. How many of you guys are freshmen? It's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
How many of your seniors?
How many of you are in between?
Now I'm gonna be like, who's from Mexico? And what I was gonna say, be sure to like take time for yourself, and don't think that it's selfish. Like whenever I was like overwhelmed with like GSC bullshit or whatever it was that I was dealing with in the campus community, like I retreated into like my techie nerdy shit. And like maybe I didn't go to all the parties or whatever, maybe like I wasn't spending time with my community, but that shit got me a job. You know, like I could like put that over here, I could be like, I'm gonna just like nerd out in the computer lab and make some maps. And that was what it was for me. Maybe it's for you, maybe you like art. We hire designers because they make good art. And we pay money, you know, like if you want to go into education, go into education, but like cultivate what you're good at. Spend time on you, and that's the shit you're gonna get hired for. Like for real. Like I spent time making maps because I like making maps and I was a nerd about it, but also because I could like put the rest of my life over here and just be like, I need to pick out some good colors. Also, I'm saying, no, this is real though. And the job that I'm at, that I got not right out of college, but soon after, the application was make a map and write a paragraph about it. You know, like spend time on you. What you're good at is going to get you a job too.
And I want to add to that, and people on the panel may disagree, and I welcome those comments, whatever they may be. I I would hate for people to feel like they're not being a good Latino or a good Latina. When I was at Georgetown, I studied the Middle East and I took Arabic, and my father was like, what are you doing? Why are you not studying like Mexico, which is where I'm from LA. Everyone like, well, largely is from Mexico. So he was really confused. But I was really happy to study the Middle East and do something that wasn't part of like my, there we go, see, represent. I also didn't do Mecha, I didn't do LASA, I didn't do Puerto Latino. I did DC schools, which was my connection to different immigrant populations in DC. But I never felt like I was any less part of the Latina community, the immigrant community. And I would hate for any of you to ever feel like that if you're not super involved in anything that people would consider part of the community. I think it's a really good point to find what makes you happy and what you're passionate about and go forth and represent the community in those areas. And that's equally important, if not more so. That's my piece.
So I'm going to interject, and I want the alumni here to, because there's a lot of underclassmen and then maybe some sophomores, a little bit of seniors, but a lot of them are, I think, dealing with the transition right now. And I think that if you guys can get personal, I want you guys to like dive back to that freshman year. How did you feel?
Oh, it was too hard.
That sophomore year, who helped you? What made it better?
I can go even though. Okay, well, I guess on the last question, who helped me? Everyone here. Hands down. Maybe not everyone, but. I didn't graduate in 2001 apparently. So.
Started in 2001.
But the larger point, when I first came to Georgetown, I was a Latino kid from LA. It's the first time I ever heard of J. Crew and boat shoes and, I don't wear them right now, I do want to say to the upperclassmen here, to the upperclassmen here, it is so important for you to, reach your hand back down to the freshmen, because I don't think that I would have ever made it, and I'm serious when I say this, I don't think I would have ever made it to Georgetown graduation had it not been for people like Emily, people like Susie, people like Jessica, people like, I'll include you two in it, but I knew you were coming to meet me later on in life. But these are the people that were there for me when I had my academic struggles, my baby mama drama, especially Emily. And I think it's so important for you guys to be there for each other. And then we talk about networking DC and trying to get this and that and whatever. The only network you really need is your family and each other. Really.
And when I came in, I did a lot of crying as well. And I remember by the end of my senior year, there was actually a person of color counseling, the counseling services, and that was a big, exciting moment because none of us felt comfortable going to talk to a counselor because we were all like, what's it to understand us? And I remember knocking on the doors like one of the nuns in our building because I needed someone to talk to and there was nobody, still not her, nobody. But this is where the Mecha folks came into play, that they were my lifeline to get through. But I also, in terms of stuff that is not having to do brown stuff all the time, I joined Gateway Sabor. I need to have something athletic and physical to do, and I was like, I'm a dance. And I actually I didn't leave Mecha senior year, but Mecha meetings were the same time as ritmo practice, and I was like, yo, I'm a ritmo. Because I needed that balance, and for me, dancing and I dance now still socially, still as that release. Not I don't get paid for it, nothing, but but it is still that release.
Right. So I like the fact that everybody's excited, but we're running out of time. But that's actually perfect because we want you guys to actually talk to the students personally, as yourselves. So individually, you guys can talk to them, exchange information, network with them. Like you guys are saying, networking is important. So close that bridge between both groups and make contacts.
Well, and like use us as the step to help you find the right folks to network. Networking doesn't mean go to every single party, every single event, every single reception. That is not the point of networking. You want to do it smartly so you're not wasting your time, which means talk to folks here because we're here, and then we'll be the ones to direct you to the places that are the people that are like most valuable to actually build these relationships with. Blind networking doesn't help anybody. So, like that is we're not trying to send you not all that pressure that you were saying.
Yes. On that note, I just want to, this is probably, as a senior, I mean, this is like probably the most that I've seen in one room at Georgetown. It's like incredibly exciting to me. So just to wrap up, I want to thank you all for coming. It's a Monday evening, spend it with us. And I hope we can keep these lines of communication open. A lot of students here could really use your advice, your help, your mentorship, your connections, your networks. So on behalf of everybody here, I just want to thank you all, and let's get to networking. Thank you.